So there was a lot of focus on the violence and the mayhem, that havoc, I don't know how else you want to call it, a melee up in Chicago last weekend. Nice weather, but even in the sunlight, you had groups of young people take to the streets, causing all kinds of chaos, from jumping on cars and smashing windows and lighting things on fire, and even gunshots ringing out. Just not necessarily something you want to see happen on the streets of America, let alone the Windy City. But here's a headline from the Chicago Tribune. Chicago police investigating officers' response to mob attack in Loop after witnesses say police declined to help. So the Chicago Police Department launching an investigation into how officers responded. The investigation comes after a viral video showed a mob attacking a couple as they exited a Loop store, and it follows allegations of police inaction. Now, you can, of course, speculate what some of the inaction was. It was talked about a bit yesterday by some in the Republican caucus called the Freedom Caucus, and we'll hear a little bit of that coming up here. But Brandon Johnson, if you recall, the mayor-elect, he was here in Springfield yesterday. And as the mayor-elect of Chicago, he was presenting to the Illinois General Assembly. And he talked about crime and getting more detectives and focusing on, mental health for police. But not much was talked about in reference to what's going to happen with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Kim Foxx. Because if you have the state's attorney not prosecuting certain crimes, that's going to lead to poor morale for police, who we've heard all throughout the debate about the Safety Act. A police officer goes and arrests somebody for a serious crime. They see it as serious, and then, less than 12 hours later, they see that same person, and they're probably arresting them again because they just got out of jail with no cash bond or whatever the case may be. So you could see that the morale would drop. So, I mean, that's obviously one speculation you could have there as to why police didn't respond. We'll hear from Brandon Johnson. He held a news conference yesterday outside the Capitol. Get to that clip here in a moment, and then we'll visit some of the response that the Freedom Caucus had. But, of course, always enjoy taking your phone calls as we get them. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
If anybody comes onto your property to vandalize or destroy what you worked for all your life, you ought to have the right to shoot them dead.
Well, that's a debate that's being had nationally, and something that, we're just not getting into right now. So I appreciate you at least, wanting to chime in on that. But, I guess it does kind of fit into the idea of the property up in Chicago that was damaged and whatnot, and how to respond to that if police aren't going to respond to it. And again, the headline here, Chicago police investigation about the officer's response to the mob attack in the Loop, downtown Chicago. So let's go ahead and hear what Brandon Johnson had to say. If you recall, he was posted on Twitter over the weekend that he doesn't condone violence. Make that clear. He does not condone crime. But he said, you can't demonize these young people because of the lack of opportunity in their own communities. And here's more of him responding to reporters' questions about the issue of crime and his response about not demonizing people. Here's Brandon Johnson yesterday outside the Illinois State Capitol.
I wasn't condoning, Craig, the whole statement, though, man. What does the whole statement say? Right, but I'm just saying, no, I get it, but because there are two aspects, so let's talk about both aspects. I do not look, the violence that happened over the weekend and the violence that happens too many weekends and too many days, of course we don't condone that behavior. That's the first thing that I said. Look, you've been a part of my conversations about raising a family in Austin. Who has more incentive for a safe Chicago than someone who is raising a family in a neighborhood where there are more homicides in my neighborhood over the last 4 years combined than many of the neighborhoods that have been discussed? So no, I got you. I got you, Craig. It's not a mixed message, though. Slow down for a second, okay? It's not a mixed message. These false choices that people continue to try to make this body in the city of Chicago make, it ends under my administration. That's a false choice. You can make sure that we eradicate the root causes that lead to violence. And we also can make sure that there's support on the front line to make sure that we're preventing violence. It's a false choice. And no one takes it more seriously than a family that lives through it every single day. You think I want my son on his bike and he has to worry about getting shot? Do you really believe that? Of course you don't, right? So don't give people false choices. We get to do both, you all. It is well past due that we put an end to this dynamic that somehow not make it. Look, demonizing children is wrong. We have to keep them safe as well. Have you ever taught middle school? I have. Have you ever raised young people? Do you understand the risk that young people take just because they're young? Do you know that home plate is at the bottom of my stairs? I found that out when my son was sliding down those stairs trying to score. They're young. Sometimes they make silly decisions. They do. And so we have to make sure that we are investing to make sure that young people know that they are supported. And we also have to make sure that police officers who put their lives on the line have the resources that they need to keep us safe.
Well, and I think some would say the resources that law enforcement needs is that for there to be enforcement of the law, not just police going around and rounding people up and then they're back out on the streets, to where you then get police being mocked by criminals and the morale of police drops and you don't have actual law enforcement at that point. We'll hear from the Illinois Freedom Caucus. They held a news conference yesterday. I'll share with you some of their points they were making, including saying that Illinois is now under Marxist control to a woke ideology and the reason why we don't have opportunity that Brandon Johnson says these young people lashed out over the weekend. So stay tuned. We'll get to that coming up next here on WMA. So we heard last segment, Brandon Johnson reiterates that you can't demonize children, he says. And I don't know if it was all children that were causing mayhem and chaos in the streets of Chicago last weekend, where two people ended up being shot and who knows how many cars were damaged or burned, and any kind of businesses that had their windows smashed, just absolute chaos, and people being beaten. Just the videos that were circulating were just horrifying. But Brandon Johnson, the mayor-elect of Chicago, was in Springfield yesterday, and during a news conference, he again said that, we can't demonize young people, we can't demonize children, and his statement that he put out over the weekend was that you can't demonize them because of the lack of opportunity that they've been faced with in their communities. Well, it begs the question, why do they have that lack of opportunity? So let's go ahead and now hear from the Illinois Freedom Caucus. This is Blaine Wilhauer. He's a Republican from Beecher City, and he talks about what he sees happening in the state of Illinois, especially now that Brandon Johnson is the mayor-elect in Chicago, while the state also has a Democratic supermajority in the House and in the Senate, and all statewide constitutional officers are Democrats, and a Democrat-dominated Illinois Supreme Court. So that's all three branches of government being dominated by Democrats in the state of Illinois. Blaine Wilhauer sees it as alarming.
Folks, it's not easy to say, but the Marxists are in complete control, and Lord have mercy on the people in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. Critical theory is going to rule today, and the folks there are going to continue to pay the price. Now, I can say personally, and I think everybody can say up here, that I love Chicago. We love Chicago. It's a great city. It's beautiful. It's world class. And it's imperative for a strong Chicago if we're going to have a thriving Illinois. But let's be real. Chicago's not well. Contrary to what you heard from the mayor-elect, it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. The fiscal house is falling down. Has been for some time. And let's get real, Chicago does not have enough for everybody. Like the mayor-elect said, it barely has enough to meet its obligations. The highest taxes in the country, credit rating, junk. The city's not safe. It's not safe for residents. It's not safe for business. It's not safe for employees. It's not safe for the tourists that we count on. The chaos in Chicago, as we've seen over the past couple weeks, is a national embarrassment. It's a disgrace. Young people out of control, taking over the streets, robbing, beating innocent bystanders with no remorse, no regard for basic decency. And are these people punished? Is there any accountability? Is there any consequences? There's no consequences in the city of Chicago. Instead, Brandon Johnson makes excuses for them. They shouldn't be criticized. They shouldn't be held to account because they can't help it. They've been starved of opportunities in their own communities, as he said. And, the folks up here from our parts of the state, we can empathize with that. Terrible policy from people like Brandon Johnson and the folks that supported him have starved our communities in our part of the state of opportunities for generations. So we know all about that. Because of them, all of our good jobs, or a lot of them, too many of them, have left.
So again, that's Blaine Wilhauer, and I asked him about, the lack of opportunity issue, and Democrats have dominated the state for decades in Illinois. His response.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. That's something that we talk about all the time. Opportunity. That's the key. That's the key. If you want to defeat crime, if you want to defeat all of this stuff, we need to bring opportunity. But it gets back to everything that we do here revolves around, everything is done for the special interest by the special interests here, and the regular folks get left behind. Opportunity in our part of the state is gone because of policies. It's gone because of taxes, because of regulations. We're at the bottom on every metric a job creator would want to look at to come here and invest. And when you put on top of that the quality of life stuff, they're not comfortable being safe on the street and the biggest cities in this state, that's your opportunity problem. And that's what I was getting at before. This laser-like focus on equity. I sit on the education committees and a lot of these appropriations, everything revolves around equity. A lot of times equity is the lowest common denominator. We're shooting for the wrong thing here. Equity without equity, this coupled from opportunity is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So we've got to get serious about going over the top at this point, because that's what it's going to take to bring people to this state that are going to create jobs. And we don't do that by coddling criminals. We don't do that by doing everything to the benefit of the special interests. For the teachers' unions, we're specifically with Brandon Johnson, we know who he's going to be beholden to. How much money did they give him? That's the thing. Big money special interest gives big money to politician. Politician maintains the status quo, and the working people in this state continue to get hammered, and the good ones continue to leave.
The ones who can continue to leave.
That's right, the ones who can. Yeah, they're destroying opportunity in their own communities. That's the biggest problem I have with this. That's the biggest problem I have with Brandon Johnson talking about these people are rioting because they've been starved of opportunity. Well, who the hell starved them of opportunity? Who's been running this state for a generation? Democrats got a supermajority in both chambers of the General.
So again, Blaine Wilhauer there talking about how Democrats have the supermajority in the Illinois legislature, and something he raised as on its face the reason we've got bad policies leading to a lack of opportunity that Brandon Johnson then says is why you've got people on the streets when there's nice weather out getting into fights and smashing windows and burning cars and seemingly just taking over the streets, and police not really willing to step in and stop it from happening because of whatever negative ramifications they may face from people being, as Republicans said, coddled. The back and forth is going to continue. Will there be a resolution? Who knows? But we'll definitely be talking about it more and more, including getting your reaction as well. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Be sure to follow me, Bishop on Air, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just search Bishop on Air everywhere, and we can connect that way. Let's go ahead and take a call at 217-629-7970 before we take this break. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
I'm so tired of this victim-blaming nonsense. You want to talk about opportunity? We spend $19,000 to $20,000 per student in Chicago.
Upwards to $35,000 per student in Chicago, where in other areas of the state it's maybe $6,000 per student, and you got better graduation rates and better comprehension and math skills and so on.
Even better, half of our neighboring states who produce better students. How many billions of dollars more do they want to spend, and before they realize that it's not working? Their opportunity zones and all of their equity programs are not working. You just can't throw money at the problem. It starts at the home with the parents. And a lot of parents should be ashamed that their kids were out on the street that night. But we're blaming the victims, and we're not blaming the parents, and we're not blaming the kids. It's the kids' fault, and it's the parents' fault. And then, until we realize that and come to our senses that it's time to punish bad actors, the problems will continue.
Appreciate the call. It is Springfield's Morning News, and we'll obviously open things up with more of your phone calls as time progresses.